The press release mentions that this setting up a program that will make sure that uses are reasonable of the water. How does the bill define what is reasonable, and how does that compare to current practice?
Well, first of all, as you recall, we have the reasonable use doctrine in Ohio, which we then preserve in the Constitution. So it's important that to be in constitutional compliance, we stay with the same standard. The bill provides, and I can find those sections. Brian, you want to jump in?
Yes. The bill provides basically under 4.11.5 of the compact standard that the uses must be reasonable. As the senator said, the overarching requirement is that the compact cannot trample on or in any way diminish or impair any existing rights with respect to how water is treated in Ohio. And Ohio is one of the states that recognizes the reasonable use doctrine. So what the bill does is it defers to and really defaults to the reasonable use standard for a determination ultimately of what is reasonable, because at the end of the day, that is the standard in Ohio that would count.
And in set lines 337 to 345, we try to establish for withdrawal and consumptive uses some presumptions based on the impact that the withdrawal will have on the Lake Erie level, and it spells out that level in line 341 of the bill. So we're trying to get a little bit more concrete definition of when withdrawals will not trigger the need to get into the regulatory reform.
Let me clarify in case I made anybody nervous. When I talked about those southwest states in our country, I talked about their jobs coming here, not us sending water. We cannot do that. So, just in case I made anybody nervous, we're talking about their jobs coming here because they're going to need water.
Absolutely. Do want to also acknowledge Jen Klein. Worked tirelessly both on the committee, on the board, as we spent the last year at ODNR, and Pat Jackman is here. Also, Pat worked hard. Anybody else here from our who sat through all those sessions? And we appreciate it. It was sometimes a very interesting educational process. But we're trying to find that line that balances the value of our fresh water as a job-creating economic asset, but still meet our requirements to be long-term promoting and preserving the water as spelled out in the compact. And that's really what we're trying to reach with this legislation.
And just to make sure that I'm clear here, whenever we're talking about reasonable use, you were talking about the point at which the regulatory provisions would be triggered. That's the standard. If it would impact the water levels of Lake Erie, the regulation kicks in?
Well,
except for a couple, we do delineate a couple high-value streams. I mean, it's really, when you talked about the Great Lakes Compact, remember, it's not just the water level of Lake Erie. That was my whole point back then, because it talks about the water of the basin. That's the water in the lake, but it's also all surface water and groundwater in the northerly, roughly, 30-some counties of Ohio. So the goal here is to make sure we protect both, promote and protect both the use of Lake Erie water and surface and groundwater inland. And so what I brought to you is the primary standard, but there are some exceptions for what is referred to as high value streams. They will have a higher threshold.
To the lawmakers, what should Ohioans make of the fact that business groups are backing this, environmental groups are not?
Well, we're hoping by the end of the process that the environmental folks will understand the wisdom of our approach as well. And the idea here being that we've lost hundreds of thousands of jobs in Ohio. As Representative Wacthmann pointed out, there will come a day out west when those people in the Silicon Valley and Arizona and Nevada are going to be looking for water. And what we don't want to do is foreclose the ability, since we do have the benefit of an abundance of fresh water in Lake Erie, and it's in the basin, we don't want to foreclose their opportunity to come here. And we're trying to strike that balance. This legislation, I think, is environmentally responsible, but also not so excessive as to foreclose the use of a great asset, which is the fresh water we have in Northeast Ohio. And if you come to my district and you say, we're going to protect it, but we're also going to have it available for new business and job growth, I'm going to tell you my constituents are going to say that's what they want to see done. They don't want to see us get so rigid that we foreclose
Well, exactly. I think this is a well-balanced bill. We'll have a committee process, obviously. We'll thoroughly review and discuss these issues, and all parties certainly will have their input, and the committee will make decisions based on that input. But clearly, you know, I am about making sure the state has an environment that is good for job opportunity. Look, I will never be ashamed of that. I want economic growth. I want people in this state to be employed. And my district has been hit as hard as many unemployed. You can drive through every community in my district. There's factories shut down. There's no cars in the parking lot. And to the extent that water is the greatest asset we have in northern Ohio, we need to make sure that that's part of economic growth. But again, I think it's a balanced bill. But again, the committee process, I'm sure, will be very thorough.
This point about if Ohio doesn't act, then some other rule on water withdrawals is kind of the default. And I want to make sure I understand. And your point is that that would be too restrictive on jobs and growth. Is that right?
Oh, absolutely. Section 4.10.2 of the compact has a kind of a default provision. If we don't pass an implementation or enabling statute, then we're dropped down to a 100,000 gallon a day restriction, which is, in my opinion, extremely restrictive based on the information that we looked at on the advisory board for a year, based on the information we've had working with ODNR. That would have an extremely negative impact on the availability of fresh water for future job creation and business development in Ohio. And I think it would be irresponsible on the legislature to not enact an implementation statute that protects Ohio's resources. And remember, I wasn't the greatest fan of the compact. We got the constitutional amendment in, and that was important to me. But we now have to live within the compact, so I think we should do it responsibly as a legislature and not default.
Is there a way that you can compare this 100,000 gallon per day limit, which you say is too draconian and too tough? Can you compare that with what we have right now?
I'll let Brian touch on this one.
Well, there is an existing water use statute in existence in Ohio right now. It's under Chapter 1501 of the revised code. And in that statute, that's a statewide program, and it sets its thresholds at 2 million gallons. So what this bill does is mirrors that, because we're trying to provide uniformity across the state for a variety of reasons. But the consideration then is that it would be a 2 million gallon threshold with respect to surface water and groundwater other than Lake Erie. If it's a withdrawal directly from Lake Erie, the threshold would be 5 million gallons, which is in various discussions we've had, would have no impact whatsoever with respect to Lake Erie.
But you're saying that the 2 million and the 5 million, those are what we basically have right now?
Well, we have the 2 million gallon right now. The 5 million gallon is a new number. And then, but significantly, importantly, for the small, high-quality streams in Ohio, which there are a great number of those in the Lake Erie watershed, those receive enhanced protections under this bill by giving ODNR rulemaking authority in consultation with environmental groups to develop a set of rules to manage site-specific withdrawals from those streams. And in those cases, the threshold is 300,000 gallons.
Now, the 2 million is the same.
2 million is what we have.
5 million, can you give us a comparison with what your proposed 5 million is right now? What is
There's
it?
no restriction.
There's no restriction.
This is a trigger. Current Ohio law has no restriction on use other than if you draw more than 2 million gallons, you have to register. Under the compact, we are required to put in a process for new or expanded consumptive uses, or else we default to that standard that's in the compact. But under current law today, the only thing is when you cross 2 million, you have to register. What we're doing in this bill is saying, inland, 2 million, you're going to fall under the requirements of the bill. If you're drawing it directly out of Lake Erie, it's 5 million, but there is no limit today. And this will be a new limit, consistent with the compact. And then on these sensitive streams that are particularly particular environmental issues and concerns, those will have a 300,000 gallon limit. And we're comfortable that all of those, meet both the environmental concern, but also the adequacy of water for economic use. So we're going from a current system of 2 main to register to a three-tiered system.
Let me make